Greetings all the year 13 students. Welcome to Strength 2.1. This is where we are going to be discussing about atomic structure and bonding. Now, just like our solar system, which is made up of the sun and the planets, where the sun is in the center of the planet surrounded by all the planets around it. It is the center of the solar system which contains the larger mass. Similarly, chemists believe that the structure of the atom is like that. At the center of the atom is the nucleus, which contains a much greater mass compared to the rest of the atom. And just like most of the solar system, which is an empty space with only a few planets here and there, so is the space of an atom, as we think about it, with only a few particles scattered here and there. Now, in this particular topic, I will be discussing about the isotopic abundance of certain atoms and some of the very important concepts in chemical bonding. So let's venture out and see what isotopic abundance is. In the periodic table, there are some elements which have the same atomic number but different mass number. These atoms of the same element, they are referred to as isotopes, simply because they contain the same number of protons but different number of neutrons. Now, the atomic mass that is written in the periodic table is the average of the isotopic abundance of individual isotope of that element. So to calculate the relative atomic mass of a particular isotope, we are required to use the following formula. According to this formula, it says that the relative atomic mass of a particular isotope is equal to the sum of percentage abundance of each isotope multiplied by the atomic mass of the isotope, and the whole thing is divided by 100. So let's look at an example and try to understand how we are going to use this formula. So in example number 1, we have chlorine existing as two isotopes, chlorine 35 and chlorine 37. Chlorine 35 has 75% isotopic abundance, while chlorine 37 has 25% abundance. From this data, we are supposed to be calculating the relative atomic mass of chlorine. So, the first thing we do is to write the formula down. And then we substitute in the values. Now, for percentage abundance, we are going to be looking at one isotope first. Let's say we look at chlorine 35 first. So for chlorine 35, it has 75% abundance. So we will have 75 times 35, which is a mass of the chlorine, plus you add the other isotope as well. So this is how the equation will look like. So you can see here this 35 is a mass of chlorine 35, 75 is a percentage abundance of chlorine 35. Add it to the other isotope. So the other isotope chlorine 37 has a mass of 37, whose abundance is 25, and the whole thing is divided by 100. Depending on how many isotopes you have, you keep on doing the addition. So once we do that, we will see that the relative atomic mass comes to 35.50. And it is this relative atomic mass which is written in the periodic table as the relative atomic mass of chlorine. Next, sometimes we are given the relative atomic mass and we are supposed to be calculating the percentage abundance. So in order to do that, the first thing we are going to be doing is making an assumption as such here. When we calculate the percentage abundance, we are assuming that one of the isotope is X%, while the other one is 100 minus X%. So that is a very important assumption we are making. It doesn't matter which isotope is X%. You can choose any of the isotopes to be X%. We will come with the same answer. So let's just say one of the isotope is X%, and once we write the formula down, let's choose chlorine 35 to be X%. Therefore, chlorine 37 will become 100 minus X. So all we have to do is to substitute these values in this equation given here. The relative atomic mass is given in the relative atomic mass that is given is 35.5. That's the relative atomic mass. So that's the one that we are going to be putting here, is equal to Chlorine 35, the mass is 35 and the percentage is X. So we multiply these two, which will give us 35X. Add it to the different isotope for the other isotope. So the other isotope has a mass of 37 and its isotopic abundance is 100 minus X. So we will put the information as it is and try to expand the equation. So this is how the equation will be expanded. We will remove the 100, move it to the other side, and it will be 35.5 times 100, which will give you 3550 is equal to 35x plus 3700. So this 3700 is obtained by doing this multiplication. Okay, so 37 times 100 we get 3700, and then 37 times minus x we will get minus 37x. And then you bring the like terms together. We will eventually get our equation simplified as minus 150 is equal to minus 2x. Make x the subject of the formula and your value will be 75%. So this x, one where we made the assumption chlorine 35 is the x. So chlorine 35 is x%. And if I want to find what is the percentage abundance of chlorine 37, I'm going to use this particular formula and substitute x in place of 75 in place of x. So that's how I'm going to be solving that now. 100 minus 75 and you get your answer as 25%. So this is our percentage abundance of each isotope. Chlorine 35 is 75% and chlorine 37 is 25%. When we are describing the behavior of an electron in detail, we make use of certain numbers, a set of 4 numbers which are referred to as quantum numbers. So in short and simple, we can say quantum numbers are those set of 4 numbers which describe the behavior and energy of a particular electron in the orbital of an atom. So let's see what these 4 quantum numbers are, and then we will be looking at each of them in detail. First of all, we need to understand how to represent an electron. When we are drawing the structure or the atomic structure of an atom, we are going to represent an electron by an arrow which is pointing up, arrow which is pointing down. Okay, so this indicates that the electron is spinning either clockwise or anti-clockwise. So if the arrow is pointing up, that means the electron is spinning clockwise, and if the arrow is drawn like this here, that means the electron is spinning anti-clockwise. So these are the 4 quantum numbers. We have the principal quantum number denoted by small n, secondary quantum number whose synonyms are azimuthal or orbital quantum number denoted by a small l, magnetic quantum number represented by ml, and spin quantum number which is represented by ms. A principal quantum number will describe the shell of an atom. In other words, the shell of an atom is known as the principal quantum number. So when we are talking about the first shell, we will say principal quantum number 1, or we write it as n is equal to 1. So the first shell is always the lowest energy level. Then we have the second shell, where principal quantum number is equal to 2, and we write it as n is equal to 2, and so forth. Then we go to the secondary quantum number. A secondary quantum number will describe the shape of an orbital. I will come across the word orbital later on. Basically, an orbital is a region in space where electrons are actually found. So to find out how many of each sub-levels are there, we are going to be using a secondary quantum number. So secondary quantum number is equal to principal quantum number minus 1. And then the third one, magnetic quantum number, describes the orientation an orbital is having. So in other words, it tells you how many of each orbital are there in each particular shell. And that is equal to negative L value all the way up till positive L value. Okay, so this will tell you how many orbitals are there in the particular shell. And finally, the spin quantum number. It tells you the direction the electron is spinning. And we can write the clockwise spin as positive half and the anti-clockwise spin as negative half. So let's see what these four quantum numbers are in real and try to understand where we are going to be using these quantum numbers in. Okay, let's just think for a while. Let's look at one particular scenario. Let's assume I ask you a question, asking you about where exactly do you rest after a tiring day. So let's just say we have a building. You wouldn't say that I'm resting in this building. That's too general. In order to understand where exactly you are going to be found, you need to break this down. So a building can be broken down into many levels. Each of this level can be further broken down into many apartments. So we will expect one building to have a lot of apartments, okay, small units. Each of these apartment or unit will be further broken down into individual rooms. And you can say that my resting area is here. So this is where I will be found. Now, in a similar way, when we compare this scenario to an atom, if I ask where are the electrons found in the atom? So from our basic chemistry, we will say electrons are found in the shell, but that is way too general because shells will contain a lot of electrons scattered all over the place. So we need to find out and say exactly where the electrons are found in the shell. Therefore, we can compare the structure of an atom to the scenario that I have given just now. An atom can be represented by a building. Just like a building, an atom is a general structure which is further broken down into shells. There are many shells in the atom. Each shell will be broken down into sublevels or subshells. And each of these subshells will be further broken down into many orbitals. It is here in this orbital where we are going to find the electrons. So if I ask you, where are electrons located in the atom? Electrons are found in the orbitals. So we can say orbitals are the regions in space which contain the electrons. So we have just seen how the atoms are further broken down into many divisions. The atom is broken down or it contains the shells. Shells themselves are divided into many sublevels. Each sublevel in the shell contains orbitals. So we will expect a lot of orbitals to be found in the sublevel. We will also expect a lot of sublevels to be found in a particular shell. So let's try to see how many sublevels and orbitals are found in each of the shells. Starting with the first shell, which is n is equal to 1. So n is equal to 1 means we are looking at the first shell. So if I want to know how many sublevels are there, I am going to find out the secondary quantum number. Secondary quantum number, let's recall from the table given, is equal to n minus 1. So when I find the secondary quantum number, n is 1, 1 minus 1 is 0. So when L is equal to 0, the shape of the sublevel, we can say it's a spherical shape, or the orbital is a spherical shape in nature. Okay. Then once we find out how many sublevels are there, we need to find out how many orbitals are there in each of the sublevels. So to find the number of orbitals, we will make use of the magnetic quantum number now. One more time, the principal quantum number tells you the shell of an atom, while the secondary quantum number tells you the number of sublevels. Now we will find the number of orbital using the magnetic quantum number. So magnetic quantum number is equal to positive L all the way up till negative L. Since L is equal to 0 here, we do not have negative 0 or positive 0. It is only 0. So ml is equal to 0. Now this 0 simply means one orbital, right? And that one orbital where ml is equal to 0 is spherical in shape. So L is equal to 0, that is called an s orbital. Get the second shell, n is equal to 2. let's try to find out how many sublevels are there and how many orbitals are in each sublevel. So n is equal to 2, then we will find the secondary quantum number, which is L. L is equal to n minus 1. So that simply means that anything before 1 can also be repeated. Like 2 minus 1 is 1. But that doesn't mean that L is equal to 1. That's not the only orbital that is found here. N minus 1 giving you 1 simply means everything before 1 is also present in the second shell. So the second shell contains the secondary quantum numbers as 0, where the s orbital is having a spherical shape, and it will also contain the secondary quantum number value of 1, which is equal to the p orbital. So now to find the magnetic quantum number, let's make use of the secondary quantum number. If the secondary quantum number is 0, L is equal to 0, then ML will be equal to 0. And if the secondary quantum number is 1, then our ML value will have a possibility from negative L to positive L. That means it will have values from negative 1, 0 and positive 1. So now let's see what we have just figured out. When I'm looking at the first shell, how many sublevels are there? The first shell has one sublevel. How many orbitals are in this sublevel? One orbital. Okay. We have L is equal to 0. That orbital is called an s orbital. So we have an s orbital in the first shell, and you can see L is equal to 0 in the second shell as well. So we have L is equal to 0, so that is an s orbital as well. Right? When L is equal to 1, then it will be known as a p orbital. So L is equal to 1 will be called a p orbital. And the p orbital shape looks like this, a dumbbell shape. P orbital can lie in one of the three axes, on the x-axis, on the y-axis, and on the z-axis. So on the x-axis, this is ml is equal to negative 1, this is ml is equal to 0, and this is ml is equal to positive 1. So how many orbitals are there in the first shell now? First shell, there is only one orbital, which is equal to s orbital. We will say 1s. 1 means first shell. S means L is equal to 0. Then how many orbitals? So in the second shell, we have one s orbital here, and we have 3 p orbitals. So altogether there are 4 orbitals in the second shell. The information, the s orbital belonging to the second shell, we will write 2s. The p orbital belonging to the second shell, we write down 2p. Then we look at the third shell and try to figure out how many orbitals are in the third shell. Now third shell, to find that out, we first find the L value. L is equal to n minus 1. So here it will be 3 minus 1. 3 minus 1 is equal to 2. But everything before 2 is also present in the shell. So that is 0, which is s orbital. And ml will also be 0. So you can see that all the s orbitals are spherical in shape. And it will have a value of 1. So L will have a value of 0. L will have a value of 1. If it is 1, then ML will be negative 1, 0, positive 1. And once we find the two L values for the third shell, we look at the third one. N minus 1 is equal to 2. So that means the L values are 0, 1 and 2. So if it is L is equal to 2, then we are looking at a d orbital, right? So if L is equal to 2, ML values will be ranging from negative 2, so negative L all the way to positive L, which is negative 2, negative 1, 0, positive 1 and positive 2. We just follow the number line pattern, okay? So how many orbitals are there in the third shell now? In the third shell, we have one s orbital, 3 p orbitals and 5 d orbitals. So let's see how many altogether are there. So 5 plus 3 plus 1. We have 9 orbitals altogether in the third shell. And this is how the d orbital looks like, a flowery shape. So if I ask you, what is the shape of an s orbital? It is spherical in nature. What is the shape of a p orbital? They are dumbbell in shape. D orbitals, they are flowery in appearance. Okay. We just said that the s orbital belonging to the first shell is called 1s. The s orbital belonging to the second shell is called 2s. Likewise, the s orbital belonging to the third shell will be known as 3s. The p orbital for the second shell called 2p, while the p orbital belonging to the third shell will be known as 3p. And the d orbital of the third shell will be known as 3d. 3 means third shell, d because L is equal to 2. So one more time, let's try to find out how many orbitals are there in each of the shells in the atom. So when we have the first shell where n is equal to 1, let's try to work out using this particular. We will first find out the L values. L is equal to n minus 1, and L will tell you how many sublevels are there. So let's see, n is 1, 1 minus 1 is equal to 0. Minus 1 will be equal to 0. So this 0 basically means that there is one orbital. So if ML is 0, what is ML mean? ML will tell you how many orbitals are there. So that's negative L all the way up till positive L. So if L is 0, ML will also be 0. 0 means we are looking at an s orbital. L is 0 means we have a s orbital. And this s orbital has how many spaces? So that will be told by the ml value. Ml is 0, that means one space. Okay, and that is the 0 value. Okay, let's look at the second one. N is equal to 2. So for n is equal to 2, let's find the possible L values. N minus 1. So we will have 2 minus 1. 2 minus 1 is 1, right? But that also means everything before 1 is also present in the second shell. So that would be, we have L is equal to 0 and L is equal to 1. So how many sublevels are there in the second shell? There are 2 sublevels. L is equal to 0 and L is equal to 1. If L is equal to 0, we have an s orbital. Every time L is equal to 0, it's called an s orbital. If the s orbital is in the first shell, it's called 1s. If the s orbital is in the second shell, it's called 2s. Then we have L is equal to 1. When L is equal to 1, it is called a p orbital. So let's see how many spaces we have for each of these orbitals. Now for ml, we use this formula again, negative L to positive L. If L is 0, then ml will be 0. If L is 1, ml will be negative 1. Use a number line format, 0 and positive 1. So they are altogether 3 orbitals in the p orbital. So s orbital, L is equal to 0, ml 0, so 1 space. L is equal to 1 means p orbital. There are 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we label the ml values. So ml is 0 for 2s and ml is negative 1, 0 and 1 for this particular orbital. Okay, I hope you are understanding this through. Then we look at the third shell. For the third shell, n is equal to 3. Okay, so let's see how many L values are here. So n minus 1 is 2, 3 minus 1 is 2, so everything before 2 is also there. So that's 0, 1 and 2. So how many sublevels are there in the third shell? There are 3 sublevels. L is 0, that means there is a s orbital, 3s. L is 1, that means there is a p orbital. P orbital of third shell is called 3p. L is equal to 2 means there is a d orbital, 3d. How many orientations are there? To do that, we find the ml value. So if L is 0, ml will be 0. If L is 1, Ml will be 0, negative 1, 0 and positive 1. If L is 2, it will be negative 2 all the way up till positive 2. Okay, so let's see. When we have L is 0, we have s orbital, 3s. So 3s has one space. Okay, Ml0 means one space. Then we have L is equal to 1. L is equal to 1 means p orbital. P orbital has three spaces, three regions. So 1, 2, 3. Then we have the d orbital. D orbital is L is equal to 2. How many spaces are there? We have negative 2, negative 1, 0, positive 1 and positive 2. 5 spaces. So that's Ml is equal to 0. This one is negative 1, 0 and positive 1. These negative 1, 0, positive 1, they are the Ml values. Okay. Then we have negative 2, negative 1, 0, positive 1 and positive 2. So let's count how many orbitals are there in each of the shell. We have the first shell. First shell contains how many orbitals? First shell contains 1 orbital. Second shell contains 2s and 3 p orbitals. So altogether there are 4. Third shell. Third shell has 3s orbital, a 3p orbital and a 3d orbital. Altogether how many? 5 plus 3 which is 8 plus 1 which is 9. So these are how many orbitals are there in each of the shell. Each orbital contains maximum 2 electrons. So you work out using your maths. Okay, so we will try to find out how many electrons will be found in each of the shell. Let's recall our basic atomic structure and bonding configuration that we have learned in year 11 and year 12. We said that the first shell contains maximum 2 electrons, right? Second shell contains maximum of 8 electrons, while the third contains a maximum of 18 electrons. So each orbital, like I said, contains maximum 2 electrons. So if there is one orbital, then there will be maximum 2 electrons. Each orbital has 2 electrons. Second shell, 4 orbitals are there. Each orbital contains 2 electrons, so the total of 8 electrons will be there in the second shell. 2 in the 2s and 6 in the 2p. Then we have the third shell. Third shell will contain 2 electrons in the 3s, 6 electrons in the 3p and 10 electrons in the 3d orbital. So altogether it will have 18 electrons. And this is how we work out the configuration. Once we know how many orbitals are present in each of the shell, we will be able to write the electron configuration of the particular electron. Well then students, I hope you have understood a little bit about quantum theory. Now we will be continuing more on these things in our next part of the video when we are writing electron configuration. So at the moment you are supposed to be just learning the 4 quantum numbers and what they represent. You should also be able to work out the number of orbitals for each of the shells using the mechanism that we have discussed earlier on in this video. So now it's time for a quiz. Let's see how much you have understood the concept. Now, when you are attempting this particular quiz, you can always pause the video or go back to the notes again and see that you are able to understand the concept better. Attempt the quiz and then check out for the answers. Keep watching the video until the end. So your first question is this. Lithium is consisting of 2 isotopes, Li6, Li7. Li6 is 7.4% abundance and Li7 is 92.6% abundance. Calculate the relative atomic mass of lithium. Well students, pause the video and let's see if you're able to work this one out. So your answer for this particular question is 6.93. Now since relative atomic masses do not carry any unit, you don't actually have to write any unit. However, Should you be required to do so, you can always write atomic mass unit. So 6.93 atomic mass unit. Question number 2. Rubidium has two naturally occurring isotopes, Rb85 and Rb87. You are given the relative atomic mass of 85.47. Calculate the percentage abundance of each isotope. Let's check out our answers now. So rubidium-85 will be 76.5%, while rubidium-87 will be 23.5%. Mark your work and see if you are on the right track, students. And the final quiz for the day. Find out how many orbitals are there in the fourth shell of an atom. So you must have worked out the solution by working out following the method that is given there. Let's see. If we are looking at the fourth shell, then n is equal to 4. And to find the number of orbitals, we have to go in a sequence. From n, we determine the L value. So L value is equal to 0, 1, 2 and 3. Why is it 0, 1, 2, 3? Because L is equal to n minus 1. So 4 minus 1 is 3. That means maximum up till 3 will be there. Everything before 3 will also be there. And once you find your L value, work out your ML values. So if L is 0, ML will be 0. If L is 1, ML will be negative 1, 0, positive 1. And if L is 2, then we will have negative 2 all the way to positive 2. If L is 3, we will have negative 3 all the way up till positive 3. So all you have to do is to count how many of the ML values are written. ML is each orbital. So we have one orbital here. If we have L is 0, that's the S orbital. L is 1, that's P orbital. L is 2 is a D orbital. L is 3 is a F orbital. We don't actually look at F orbital. We will only focus up till D orbital. So altogether we have these many orbitals, count them, and your answer will come to 16 orbitals. Time to think of something else. How many electrons do you think will be present in this particular shell? Or maximum, how many electrons do you think it will contain? Since each orbital contains maximum 2 electrons, 16 orbitals will contain maximum of 32 electrons. So students, until then we meet next time. Take care. Bye.